Well, I'm happy that we're here learning Gemara today. That's the not the most important thing, but it's up there. I want to start with, before we jump into the text itself, I'd love to hear about a dream you've had. I don't mean like in a metaphorical sense, like a goal. I mean like you were asleep and you had a dream. What's a dream that you've had that like sticks with you? I'll share first if it's easier. I have a recurring dream that I've had for the last 20 years or so. Every time I have it, it's different, but it's always got the same pieces to it. I'm always being chased, and there's always some sort of other force present. It's not like malignant. It's like it's more neutral than anything else. But that dream is always. I have it all the time. Sometimes in one place, sometimes in another place. Sometimes it's. It's not always a nightmare. It's just but the same pieces. And so I think about it every time I wake up. It's like, had that dream again. You don't have to talk about recurring dreams, but they don't have a dream that they remember.
I don't. It's the weirdest thing. I do not remember my dreams.
I pretty much don't either.
Amazing.
Sorry about it.
That's okay. You don't need to apologize. You're missing out.
I remember it because it was unusual. Is that like my father, who died like almost 10 years ago, was in it, and that's very unusual. But he was like healthy, and my mother, who's very elderly with dementia, was healthy also. It was like one of those. I was about to go visit her. Clearly, that's what it was about. But that was unusual that I remembered that and that he was in it. So,
People in that world will tell you that it's not at all unusual to have dreams about relatives who passed away.
Yeah. But I hardly ever do. So it was stuck with me.
Yeah. I think the practice, like remembering dreams, is a practice, right? It's like it's the kind of thing where you have a dream and then you tell somebody, really, here's the dream I had, and you say it like a bunch of times to a bunch of different people. That's how you start to remember it. And then you said something that I think is really important, which is you said like, oh, I know why I had it.
Oh yeah.
Right? You were able to interpret it almost in the moment. Right? Yeah. Oh, this is what's happening in this dream. Yeah. This is a manifestation of fill in the blank, whatever the thing is.
Anxiety about visiting.
Sure. Sure. All right, whatever it might be, right? But I wanted to just name that those are two separate things, right? Remembering the dream, having the dream, remembering the dream, and interpreting the dream are like, they're different systems, perhaps.
I'm definitely a dream rememberer, or I was my whole growing up life. And then I feel like I had about 20 years when I had children, and I was so busy, I'm sure I was super sleep deprived, that I just stopped. I just thought it was maturity. I said, I guess adults don't remember their dreams. And then my last kid moved out of the house. Also, my dog died. But anyway, a lot of things like stopped, and I started remembering my dreams again. I wake up in the morning, I'd be like, Wiley, oh my God, this was so weird. I was going, and they're always like random and like crazy things, and they don't really make sense if you look at my life, but it doesn't have any like meaning to it. But anyway, that was a whole like chunk of time when I stopped remembering them, but now I am again. So it's fun. I actually love remembering.
Do you find that, in my case, there are like patterns? You notice that things happen, or every time it's its own universe of things?
One recurring one is that I can't open my eyes. I'm like somewhere and I like really want to open my eyes and I can't, I think these are just weird, like neurological things. So that's one. One is that I'm standing on the edge of a crevasse, I don't know, and I'm like, I'm like, oh, I gotta be really careful not to fall. So I have a few but mostly they are like really random. I'm on a subway in New York, then I'm like, see a guy and he's walking a penguin, and then I'm also like, but then it's not, you know what I mean? It's like that. It's like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it just pulls together like little parts of my life.
I love it.
Yeah.
And again, I want to reflect back, right, the symbols and what they mean being two separate processes, right? And I love that you already mentioned penguins and dogs, which are relevant for today. You didn't even know. Any other dream thoughts about dreams before?
I have something, but I'm not sure I can actually explain what dream is, but there's a bunch of people and I need to organize them, which very funny, everybody.
Yeah.
I would love to know the
That's not a
quality
dream,
of those
that's your
people.
life.
So there's a Gemara that says, we're not learning it today, but elsewhere it says that there are 5 things that are 1/60th of other things. So Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. and dreams are 1/60th of prophecy. And that dreams are not just dreams. There's something manifest. There's something, I don't want to say physical because they're so not physical, but that they exist in a real way. Today I was studying a Hasidic text, Tzidkat Tzadik, which I teach on Thursday nights. I'll actually be teaching that text tomorrow, in which he explains that part of the things that happen in our minds, all the things that appear, those ideas, that dreams have this capacity to also be service to God. And like, what does it look like for nighttime and sleep to be service of God? And the questions that it brings, and I think the questions that are relevant for us today too, as we get into our texts, are how does dreams as manifestations of subconscious exist with us in the conscious world and vice versa, right? So how does our conscious intentions impact our subconscious? So the example of, I'm going to go visit a relative and then they appear in my dreams, or a relative of relatives, whatever, right? That's like the conscious and the subconscious interacting. But then, sometimes you'll be out in the world and something subconscious will appear. It's an instinct or whatever. It's not always a dream. And it impacts you as well, right? It's like you see a food item or something else and you're like, ooh, it gives you chills or something. Those things those realities are interwoven, right? Like we think of them as separate, but they're actually not. They're actually not that separate. And so today we're going to talk about dreams. We're in Masechet Berakhot, which is it's the one with the shofar on it. Should be your third real page, physical page. Has everybody found it with the shofar? Mm-hmm. Amazing. This is part of a much longer section around dreams. Masechet Berakhot is the first tractate of the Talmud. And Talmud is a little funky in the sense that it doesn't really have a beginning or the end. Or like if you go to the last tractate, it doesn't say, here, this is the final one. And Berakhot doesn't say, hey, we're the first. But on some level, it's still true. Because there is an order. The rabbis put it in an order, and this is the first one. And Masechet Berakhot, for the most part, talks about prayer and blessings. It starts off with the question is, when do we recite the Shema at night? Is the very first question based on the Mishnah, and in the case here. This has nothing to do with blessings. But part of Berakhot is about this sort of daily life. It's part of like everyday stuff. And here in this section, both before and after what we're learning, is all about dreams and dream interpretation. And so what I want you to do as we read these texts is I want you to see it in more than one layer. One layer is, what is the Talmud trying to teach us by putting it in this order and organizing it in this way? Second, what's the content of this text that they're teaching us? What are the interpretations teaching us? And then I think third, how do these symbols and images that we'll look at, what are they metaphors for? Is everybody with me on those sort of, right? And then how that might be relevant for us. So does someone want to start where it says the Gemara continues? We're starting, but the Gemara continues. Please, Iris.
The Gemara continues dealing with interpretations of the details of dreams. Rabbi Hanina said, one who sees a well in a dream sees peace, as it is said, and Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of living water. So that's in Toldot.
Right, that's this week's parsha.
And ultimately there was peace.
Right, so do folks know that story?
Yeah.
Off the top of their head, maybe? I'll tell it just in case. It's okay, you don't have to have memorized all of Torah, right? Do you want to tell the story then, Iris?
Okay. Well, there are a couple of pieces to it, but at one point the folks of Gerar stopped up all of the wells that
Abraham.
That Abraham had made, and then Isaac, after they got some peace with Gerar, Isaac servants were dug. Well, Isaac's servants were redigging it and having conflict with Gerar. So Isaac moved away to a little
There was like a
distance.
negotiated deal.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
distance, okay, and then they found another. They dug and they found this other well, and that there was an agreement, and that enabled the peace between Isaac's folks and Gerar.
Amazing, right? So we have this story. There's conflict, intergenerational conflict, and ultimately peace is resolved, and it's all around wells.
Yeah.
Right, and so here Rabbi Hanina is teaching us that if in the circumstance you dream of a well, I don't know if anyone here has, good news. It's peace. Peace is coming. That's a sign of peace. Keep going. Iris, why don't you keep reading?
One who sees a well in his dream, it is a symbol that he has found Torah, as the well symbolizes Torah. As it is stated with regard to the Torah, for whoever finds me finds life, from Proverbs. And it is written here, a well of living water. And we see that a well is linked to Torah, as both are associated with life. Rava said, the well in the dream symbolizes actual life.
I love this. Okay, so we got a couple things here happening. So Rabbi Hanina is staking a claim. One who sees a well in a dream sees peace. Now again, exactly what does it mean to see peace in a dream? Like there's an interpretation thing happening here. We can sort of unpack that. And Rabbi Natan, and he says this because this example is that peace is ultimately found, right? There's a well and there's peace is ultimately found. Rabbi Natan stakes a slightly different claim, which is if you see a well, what have you found instead? Not peace, but Torah, right? And how do we know this? We have two verses here, or really a verse and a reference, right? Two verses here, or two references. One is whoever finds me finds life, and a well of living water. Which is to say that Torah and water, those imageries live together, and therefore if you see water or a well, you've seen Torah, right? And then Rava comes in to say, if you see a well, you're actually seeing mamash chaim, actual life. What do people think about this?
Well, I mean, a well was so necessary back then. You really couldn't live without water, and it certainly wasn't
Still
coming out of
can't.
the faucet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So, linking potable water with life makes sense.
Yeah. So you're with Rava in that, right? It's actual life. You can't live without wells, right?
The peace one is the weird one to me, because I mean they're living at a time where I'm sure wells are associated with conflict. Just because there were and are still fights over who has access to the fresh water. So it feels like this is almost sort of reading beyond their present time and saying, wells could be associated with peace, but that probably was not their lived experience.
Maybe.
I may be misremembering, but weren't these wells that are referred to in Bereshit 26, they were the predicate for conflict.
Correct. The argument here made by the commentaries is that it ultimately ended up in peace.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but you're right. This actual quote is like the moment conflict is about to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think here then, that might be teaching us something a little bit about peace. Right? That peace and conflict are, obviously they're interwoven, but that there's something happening about identifying the conflict part first, perhaps, or even if we want to read this all at once, right? That Torah and conflict and peace and like livelihood, almost actual life, vitality, are interwoven, right? That's as the editor has put these comments together. What is the editor trying to teach us, right? I also love that Rabbi Natan. I have a teacher, Reb Mimi Feigelson, who's currently at the Schechter, but she used to be at Ziegler when I was there. She used to like to drash on the names of the rabbis themselves. So Rabbi Natan is the one who's giving, right? Of course, and what was given more than anything else? Torah, right? It's also interesting the phrasing. If you look in the text, the last line where it says Rava Amar Chaim Mamash, that phrase Chaim Mamash, predominantly appears in capital cases when you're dealing with death penalty stuff. And so it's really interesting for that phrase to appear here, right? Again, to remind us how powerful life is. It's like really the life and death, right? And peace is like that, and Torah is like that. It has real stakes.
It also strikes me that in Torah, rarely do you get peace without conflict. There's almost always conflict first, and then there's some peace.
Right, we don't start off agreeing with each other.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. From the very beginning, right?
Right. And even in the way we as modern rabbinic Jews think of Torah, it's through the pilpul, it's the back and forth, the shaklavataria, the argument.
Right.
Torah without that is, what could it possibly even be? I love that. All right, let's keep going. Rabbi Hanan says, someone want to read that for us?
There are three items seen in dreams that are indications of peace: a river, a bird, and a pot. The Gemara elaborates: a river, as it is written, that will extend peace to her like a river. A bird, as it is written, as birds hovering, so will the Lord of hosts protect Jerusalem. And a pot, as it is written, Lord, you will establish tishpot, peace for us. Peace is likened to a pot which is placed on the fire.
All right, so here it's a little wonky because like pot and tishpot is like a great pun with the English, but it doesn't work that well in the Hebrew, right? So just to pull that one really clear, if you look in the Hebrew, we're in the 5th line. It says kedera, which is the pot for us. Dichtiv, as it is written. Hashem tishpot shalom lanu, right? And the drash is on tishpot, right? And shafat is the verb you would do when you put the pot on the fire. So that's the drash. It's not kedera pot.
Right.
It's the verb that's happening.
Right.
Okay. And then, all right, so before we get to Rabbi Hanina's comment, birds, pots, and rivers. This is when you said penguin. I was like, perfect. Right? Why do we, I mean, here, how does Rabbi Hana know that these things are peace-oriented? What's that? Like, what is he saying? What's the claim he's saying? We know that these symbols are peace. Oh, you're going to say?
I mean, the claim he's making is just kind of like there's these specific references, and I'm going to stretch to, I'm going to sort of say that they're peace.
Right.
Yeah.
So if Torah is true, if
Yeah.
we will, right? If Torah says that we have these two things associated together with peace, right? Therefore, if you see them, peace is what's manifesting. I was listening to a great interview with Dara Horn, I think her name is. She wrote the book, a number of novels, People Love Dead Jews. I was listening to an interview she was doing with Chaviv Redegur. This is a number of weeks ago. Well worth listening to anyway. And she made this interesting point where in English, we have our turns of phrase are very much rooted in Christianity. It's like it's almost unavoidable in terms of the way we do it, that she strives really hard when she writes in English to do as much Jewish turn of phrase as she can, as a result, as sort of like bringing that to the fore. For the rabbis, it's always a verse of Torah or Tanakh if they can. For them, that's the building blocks of language, is whatever they can draw from. So here, if the case is that I extend peace to her like a river, of course a river is going to be peaceful. Whereas like those things become associated together, right?
I mean, sort of putting this all together, this is like a very eclectic list of like river, pot, well, bird. And in some ways it's sort of saying like, regardless of what you're dreaming, you can assume your dream is something like aggressive or angry, but always assume, unless otherwise known, assume that your dream is pushing you towards peace.
Which is to say that if you could make a peace drash on it, you should.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Don't use a symbol to like, this must mean that something bad should happen. Like, this should be your motive to make peace.
Right. If I see a crow, which in our cultural context is a scary thing, right? I shouldn't think scary. I should think bird. It's peace. Right? Oh, I want you to bookmark that, because that comment, what you just said, is going to be so relevant to the next paragraph, which be ready because you're now going to read. Okay, but before we do that, Howard, will you finish reading this paragraph we're currently in? Rabbi Hanina said.
Rabbi Hanina said, we learned that a pot is a dream. A pot in a dream is a sign of peace with regard to a pot that does not have meat in it. As a pot that has meat in it symbolizes calamity. As it is stated, yea, they chop them in pieces as that which is in the pot and is flesh within the cauldron. That's
Right.
Micah.
Yeah, so in the book of Micah, it's this like really terrifying description of violence. And here it's like flesh in a pot. And so if you see meat in a pot, that's not a good sign, right? Your point is still well made. Don't worry, we haven't lost it yet.
Okay, so now there's a limit. There's like, yeah, if you're seeing like dead flesh, yeah, it's probably
Yeah, right.
That's a little bit of like.
If you're seeing like fleshig cholents, be wary, right?
But on the other hand, you would think that again, lived experience of these people, that meat in a pot would be a really good thing to dream about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you probably haven't had any in months.
Right, which invites, I think, right where the point you were making, Dan, right? Which is like, there's an interpretive element of it that really matters, right? It's not just what you see, it's what you're going to do with it. The next paragraph is going to unpeel that a little bit further. And Ellen, when you first gave your example of your dream, right? That's exactly why I wanted to pull apart the dream and the interpretation, because we often make a link immediately. Oh, I know exactly what this means. But perhaps it doesn't mean what I think it means, right? Or perhaps there's a choice factor in it that we have yet to uncover. And so, not to say that I wouldn't have thought the exact same thing you did, because certainly I would. I've had dreams just like that, right? I love my mother too, don't get me wrong, right? But it plays a role. The other thing I wanted to point out, again, a beautiful connection to our this week's Parsha. So this week's Parsha begins with the story of Jacob and Esav, right? Where they're both born, they're wrestling, they're having fights, whatever. And one day Esav comes home, he's famished, and his brother is doing what?
Making stew.
He's making stew, right? It's the Gemara, the text itself says those red stuff is what Esav says, which Rashi and other commentators say is a red lentil soup. Red lentil soup. There's a great drash that explains that it's actually Abraham's Shiva meal is what actually is happening, which is so interesting. A conversation for another day. But it's a soup without meat. Specifically almost, right? Because he's a hunter. He's so hungry. It's got soup without meat. And what happens at the end of that story? They don't stay in conflict forever. They make peace. And even though that's not what's intended here in the Gemara, this is where it becomes that language of, do we know the stories in the Tanakh? Like, these things become really powerful. It's like, oh, when you see soup, well, what soup stories can we think of, right? And that's a soup story we can start to think of. It starts to be part of our lexicon here. So yes, Rabbi Hanina, again, the same guy who started our conversation above about wells, he's saying, whoa, be careful, right? Not all soup is made equal, okay? All right, Dan.
It's just not all pots
Yes.
are equivalent.
Yes, of course. Yes, you're 100% right.
The one with the meat in it, that's conflict. The empty one, oh, that's good stuff.
Or it could be a pot that's full with no meat, right?
Could be lentil soup.
Could be lentil soup, right? Mushroom barley is my personal preference, but the Gemara didn't mention it. Right, but you're right, which is to say there's distinctions to be made. Okay, so again, before we move on to the next paragraph, let's just like peel back a little bit of like the I don't want to say academic layer here because that's not what's happening, but right, we have the Gemara editor. Right, when I say that, do people understand what I mean by that? Gemara editor, right? So you have the Mishnah from the first century with those rabbis, and then you have the the Tanaim. You have the Amoraim that come those couple centuries afterwards. These are a lot of the people that we see quoted, although Rabbi usually refers to people in the Mishnah from that time period, Tanaim. When they speak in Aramaic, these guys are speaking Hebrew. When they speak in Aramaic, you're usually talking about an Amora because they're in Babylonia. But there is a whole layer, sometimes they're called the Savoraim, of people who come around the 6th or 7th centuries, 5th, 6th, 7th centuries, who are actually crafting the thing that we know as Talmud. These were just teachings that they were teaching in their basements, as it were, or their B'tei Midrash. And the editor is the one who's putting these things together. That's why you can have conversations across centuries, is the editor has given it to us. And so on one layer, it's really valuable for us to see the editor has placed these teachings of Rabbi Hanan and Rabbi Hanina together. We don't know. They may not even have known each other, right? But the Gemara here, the editor is providing us this pattern of stories around peace, stories around dreams, the symbols that are in them. So that's one layer we want to identify. The second layer we want to identify is they're using verses as proof texts, right? Classic rabbinic move, obviously. This is the classic that we're just talking about, right? These are the examples we talk about. So that's a layer here that we want to keep an eye on. And then the third layer is just to keep track of these metaphors, right? Birds, wells, pots, bird. I said birds already. Rivers, right? That these are all touchstones that we can start to like add to our. So these are all layers that are happening simultaneously that each of which we can draw meaning from.
Yeah. Isn't it the case that, for a long time this was an oral tradition, and with people memorizing, and so well, he's talked about basically wells, but actually rivers are similar. They also have water, and
nice.
so, there was an
mnemonic.
association
Yeah.
between them, but the memorizers managed to get this all. Why it sometimes seems like a little hodgepodge is that that reminds me of that, and so
Yeah.
I'll stick that together.
It's so important to remember that the Talmud and rabbinic thinking in general is very associative. This reminds me of this, reminds me of this, and it gives us an opportunity to make interesting links between them that perhaps if we were to be strictly more linear, we might have missed out on.
Yeah.
I know this is a conversation my parents and I have, where one parent is very associative and one parent is very linear, and it's a very interesting way of peeling back the world. Okay, Dan, will you read for us, since this was so perfect for what you said before?
Since rivers, birds, and pots have ambiguous connotations, it is recommended that someone who sees them in a dream recite a verse that interprets the dream positively. Rabbi Yeshua.
So that's all. I'm sorry. So just a reminder, right, that the bold is the text and the not bold is is Rabbi Steinsaltz's commentary. So this is Rabbi Steinsaltz giving us the context in which to read this. All right, go for it.
Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, "One who sees something in a dream that may be interpreted ambiguously should quickly recite an appropriate verse suggestive of a positive interpretation. For example, one who sees a river in a dream should rise early and recite, 'I will extend peace to her like a river,' before a different verse, with a negative connotation, can precede it in becoming a reality. For distress will come in like a river."
Right. Okay, amazing. Let's pause there. So here we have the verse, first of all, that we just had. Right, so he's quoting the same verse. Now again, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, maybe or maybe not, doesn't know Rabbi Hanan's teaching. Right? We seem to suggest, perhaps the editor has said that they did. They knew each other's teaching. So here, what is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi saying when you have a dream?
There's many verses you could pick.
Yeah. Right?
It's stronger than that.
Yeah, but you should.
Today we've got Freud, and we think that dreams are internal. These guys thought that there were manifestations which were external and were, to some extent, indicative of what might be coming. And the claim here is that if you, the dreamer, can get ahead of it and can pick out an associated verse which is suggestive of something good, you have, by virtue of that identification of the good verse, avoided the potency of the bad interpretation to get you.
Right.
It's so neat that they're in a world of believing that dreams are foretellings of what shall be. You're saying, no, we've got some agency. If we pick the right association, then that means it's almost like the end of the Unatana Tokef. That you've got three things which, if you do them, you soften the bad decree. And here, if you associate appropriately, if you choose a positive association with your dream, you've avoided the downside of the bad association.
Right. So here, the move being, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is saying, you see a river in your dreams, right? And the moment you wake up, you have a choice, right? Your choice is interpret it positively before a negative one might occur to you, right? It's a choice. And I think, we know from the way the rabbis talk about creation, right? Words have power, right? If you say something, it becomes real in a not small way. we have a choice in terms of what this thing might mean to us.
I feel like building on it, it's like it's even more aggressive. It's like you have control over direct control over the future. So thinking of Joseph's dream, it's like Joseph, the Pharaoh's dream, when you said, I don't know, it means nothing. When Joseph says, this is what the dream means, he's actually made that true. Which is kind of, in some ways it puts God out of the picture, which is kind of weird.
Say more about that.
As in, if, at least my assumption, the classic interpretation of the whole Joseph and Pharaoh dream story is he's interpreting what God, actually Joseph explicitly says, I am just telling you what God did. But if you're taking this, it's actually the opposite. He's like, I'm going to do this, and God's going to do what I just said because I interpret it this way.
Right. So I think there's this is expressed more later on in more mystical parts of our tradition, which is that God makes choices that impact us, and we make choices that impact God. That it's not a one-way relationship; it's a two-way relationship. Right? That emunah, faith, is not one way; it's two ways. Like we're having faith in God, and God's having faith in us. And so in that way, we might say we preempt God here. Right? We're inviting God to see it our way, right? Instead of saying, God, you're not a part of it. It's like, no, actually, God, we want you to see it this way, the way that's to our advantage, that's positive, that is the way we want it, right? And here, we're going to see a couple more examples where this pattern comes in, where it's like, make a choice, see this way. Dan, why don't you read the rest of it for us?
Okay.
One who sees a bird.
Okay. One who sees a bird in a dream should rise early and recite. As birds hovering, so will the Lord of hosts protect Jerusalem. Before a different verse, with a negative connotation, can precede it and become a reality. As a bird that wanders from her nest, so the man wanders from his place. And then the pots. One who sees a pot in a dream should rise early and recite, Lord, you will establish peace for us. Before a different verse, which includes with a wrathful prophecy, can precede it. Set on the pot and set it on.
So so great, thank you so much. So now we have a couple of examples here, right? Using each of the frames. So obviously Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi must know this teaching from Rabbi Hanan, right? Because otherwise this doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So each of these things, right, we have an opportunity to twist it. Now, of course, the interesting thing is, right, Rabbi Hanan is telling us before, if you see these things, don't worry, it's peace. Right? Mm-hmm. But as we've pointed out, it's not as simple as that, right? And in fact, if we really think about, this is an invitation into a ritual, right? Of making an action, not being passive recipients, but being active changers of reality, which could mean more than just for dreams, right? For all sorts of things, right? If I hear news, I have a choice about how I respond to it, right? If my wife and I are talking about what happened during our day, I have a choice to how I'm going to interact about it, right? You write an email, you have a choice about which way you're going to articulate it. We have power, real power. And if we really take the view that dreams are 1/60th of prophecy, then not only do we have power, we have mystical power, right? We're actually getting a peek into reality that we get to then shape. I mean, these are not small things, these are big things.
Yeah, it's interesting because, going back to the experience of these culture, that word Michael used, of agency, I think is so important here and so different. Because you think about, more typically what happens is something bad happens and you pray to God to help you. Here it's like, no, it's like what you guys were saying before, it's like, I can fix this myself with my own interpretation. That's a pretty dramatic shift, it seems to me.
Yeah, there's a classic story, which people may have heard, right? That there's a big storm, and there's a huge flood, and a guy climbs up to his roof. Have people heard this story? Yeah. Right? And a guy in a boat, a little dinghy comes by. Hey, we're getting people out. Come onto the boat, right? And he said, no, God will provide, right? It's like, okay, then the next thing comes. No, God will provide, and he dies. Right. And it's like, where were you? It's like, I sent all those people, right? It's in some way, right? It might be a matter of interpretation, another layer, right? It's not so much that I'm doing it by myself and no, thanks God, I took care of it, that there's actually perhaps an interweaving there, right? That's why I use the language of saying, right, I've preempted God, or I've invited God to see it my way, right? it becomes an interesting theological question, which I know we're a little off this now, which is to say, like, well, what is our relationship to God? How do those things impact each other? And I mean, we can only make a guess or state claims. There's no proof, right? Who knows? God hasn't spoken to us about it yet.
This is also sort of a polite rebuke of the first two paragraphs, which was like, this one-to-one mapping of like, this is, this happens, this is the verse we go to. This happens, you go to the verse you go to. And this is like, no, actually, through the entire Talmud, we've picked this verse, but there's another 5 verses. But we've picked the one that's better for the world. It's not saying it's the only choice. It's saying that this is a choice for, what our goal is, and it's being sort of pulling back the curtain on like, you can select 10 verses, but you select the one that fits the story you want to tell.
Right. And the story that they explicitly want to tell is a peaceful one.
Yeah.
Right? Or Torah, or real life, or something like that, which again is a choice of its own, right?
Seems like it could have said, to wake up and say a bracha, but it doesn't.
Right.
That's not what it says. It's brachot, but it's quite different, because a bracha would just mean you asking God, but you're sort of helping yourself here as opposed to, or being more specific about.
Yeah. I mean, blessings are, just the crafting of them is incredible. And we could spend, weeks just talking about the understandings of brachot. At the end of a lot of Art Scroll Sidurim, if you have one or you have access to one, there is often a section about verses you should say after dreams. There's like a whole section on dreams. I have a couple of different art scrolls of different, holidays or whatever, and a lot of them have those kinds of things at the end, which I think is, which invites to say, perhaps people are still doing more of this than perhaps we're accustomed to doing in our part of the Jewish world, right? And I know I was talking about this recurring dream I shared at the beginning with a friend of mine earlier today, and it makes me think, especially as we're reading this, that perhaps when I wake up, I should actually, instead of being like, I had that dream again, that maybe I should be making a different choice. Say like, this is what I want this dream to mean for me today, right? All right, let's read the next one. Someone want to read for us the 4th paragraph here. It says, similarly.
Sure.
Please.
Similarly, one who sees grapes in a dream should rise early and recite, I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. Before a different verse, with a negative connotation, can precede it in becoming reality. Their grapes are grapes of gall, their clusters are bitter. One who sees a mountain in a dream should rise early and recite, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the messenger of good tidings, that announces peace, the harbinger of good tidings, that announces salvation. Before a different verse, the negative connotation can precede it in becoming reality. For the mountains will I take up a weeping and a wailing.
Amazing, right? So here we have now a couple of other images. We have grapes and of mountains. And I was thinking of the example that you had made about standing at the edge of a crevasse. This was where my first, because I had already read this before. So it's like, it could mean so many things, right? Do you find, any of you, all of you, if these images or things, I know we talked a little bit about how much of our dreams we actually remember, but do these images hold space for you so far?
It's kind of I was
Yeah,
just
please.
thinking, like, why are these like archetypes or something? Like, why these specific things?
Yeah.
There's so many other things that could appear in a dream. Why are these the things that are talked about?
Why do you
in
think?
this Gemara? I don't know. A bird, a plot.
These are all pretty mundane on some level, right? Like birds, mountains, cooking pots.
You see all the time.
Yes, stuff you see all the time.
Daily life, yeah.
It's a paradigm, I think, in the sense that, you can, if you know Tanakh well enough, to find a good verse, you could apply it to your dream.
But I think even if we took it less literally, in the sense of less of saying, let me think of a verse, right? That we make a choice about what we've decided it means. Here's the cultural context around this that I'm going to choose, right? Even if we just make it as sort of flatter, and we say, okay, if I see grapes, I'm going to think, these big, bursting, delicious grapes, and not maybe shriveled raisins or whatever, right? Something like that.
So it's almost like they're saying you dream about anything and you can put a positive gloss on it.
I mean, I think that's possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Except a pot of meat.
Except for a pot of meat, right? Right.
But a pot is cool.
Beware.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But these are kind of like universal things, like there's nothing particularly, Jewish about any of them, right? Except for the fact that they found a verse from the Torah to match it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. That's perfect. Would you like to read the next one, please?
Where are we? One who sees shofar?
You betcha.
One who sees a shofar in a dream. Oh, here we are. Okay, there's something particular, right? That was a good lead-in. In a dream, you should rise early and recite, and it shall come to pass in that day that a great shofar shall be sounded, and they shall come that were lost in the land of Assyria, and they that were dispersed in the land of Egypt. Before a different verse, in which the shofar is a symbol of war, can precede it in becoming reality. Blow you the horn, the shofar, in Ivah.
Right. So here we have another sort of similar paradigm. Choose the good thing, not so much the bad thing. Right. But I think you're right to say that almost all the things we've seen so far are relatively mundane. Water, pots, birds, rivers, right? What was it, the other? Grapes, mountains, and then now shofar. Right? Maybe this one's always like in Tishrei, like in Elul. It's like if you're in Shul, whatever, you hear the shofar, you start dreaming about shofars. I know I've certainly had a dream about a shofar before, right before Rosh Hashanah. Chills to the bone. Do you think that the symbols matter, or is it the choice that matters? What in this text, based on what we're learning so far, right, the editor has given us some choices. Now we're getting like a snapshot. There's more to this before, and there's more after, where it's different interpretations. We have the whole story of Joseph that we made reference to, right? We didn't yet talk about Jacob and the dream of the ladder, right? And again, for him, God was here and I didn't know it, right? Like very much divine presence. Do these specific symbols matter to us, or is it really just the choice?
I think it's the choice. That's why I said it's how you approach. That's why I said it was a paradigm. It's how you, no matter what your dream is, it's how you think about approaching it.
Well, I think they see the dream as narrowing the categories with which it can be associated, and once the categories have been narrowed, then there is the ability to select a positive meaning as opposed to a negative from among that limited set of associates.
Right, which in some sense, we could say, if I have a dream about an animal of any kind, right, perhaps there's an animal, right, we're about to see a dog and a lion in a second, right, where if I didn't have it explicit, perhaps I might be afraid or I don't know how to deal with it. Right, it's like at least if we've explicit some of them, I could probably find something to hook onto. Right, maybe it wasn't a well, but I saw a faucet or a shower was an image. Right, I'm thinking about myself in the modern moment. Right, or for them, if it was like, oh, I didn't see a bird, but I saw an insect and it had wings. Oh, wings are like bird. Right, is that the kind of thing you're saying? It's like, oh, I've got things to grab onto.
Well, just that they still believed predominantly that dreams came to you from the outside, and that they not only came to you from the outside, but that they were harbingers of something that was actually going to happen. And what they are saying here is that because we have textual associations with them that go both positive and negative, we have the power to alter the consequences of your having had this dream if you simply get on top of it.
Right, which is to say, it's from outside, and therefore our outside action has to be corresponding.
No, it's from outside, and it has the potential to control our future. But given the fact that there may be more than one biblical verse that we can associate with it, we can turn that impact on our future from negative to positive.
Well, most of us, if we want to update it, most of us don't know the Tanakh that well. We might know some of these verses, we might not know them.
That's why bad things
And-
happen to us. We can never jump on the right interpretation.
But I think.
It's a good reminder. We should learn more
But I
Tanakh,
think
maybe.
what Jerome was saying was that, you can just be positive about it. It doesn't really need a verse, but this is how the rabbis thought in verses.
Yeah.
In the Talmud. But maybe.
Because it was coming from
Right,
outside.
So I want to play with this a little bit,
Sure.
which is to say that I think it's reasonable to say that dreams are unique in the sense that they're internal and external. Maybe not unique, but that they're both internal and external, which is they're manifestations of our subconscious in ways that we don't totally understand. But they're also totally impacted by what you saw that day, what you encountered, your external life. Ellen, I'm going to pick on you for a moment again.
That's okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, no, it was-
right? Which is encountering a family member, and or the anticipation of encountering a family member might make them or someone nearby appear in your dream. That's an external thing that's happening, right? Now we've manifested it internally.
But it's an external thing that passed through you. I mean, the thing that Freud gave to
Yeah.
humanity was the recognition that despite several millennia of beliefs that dreams came from outside, he stressed that they came from inside, and also that it would be possible to infer something about the person from the associations that they had with the dream.
So here's what I want to do then. I think that there's a deep level in which we've all sort of internalized that, right? In the sense that, like, I agree.
21st century. That's
Yeah,
what we think.
that's what's effectively the thing. But I want to invite us to really see this the way the rabbis do, which is that there is a divine component to this, that it's a 60th of prophecy. I'm not suggesting that any of us are prophets per se, but that, like, there is something happening to us from outside, and that our choice about how we deal with it impacts the world around us. Yeah, please.
I also want to push back on this. Like, saying it's a 60th prophecy means it's 59 out of 60 not prophecy.
Sure.
So in some ways, like, Freud is just pushing away that 1/60th. And like, there's other texts where they're talking about dreams as prophecy, but nothing here really says dreams are external. It's very much saying, like, this is what's on your mind. Here's how it's interpreted to affect what you do next.
I think that's
So
that's
in some ways, this is very, like, this text at least is very internal. In context of the greater literature, that might not be true.
Actually, I
I-
read it,
I-
Wait a sec.
I
Wiley,
read
go
it a
for
little
it.
bit differently, and I like the way you express it as
Yeah.
dreams were considered harbinger, because as I read this, it's not so much a choice, it's if you dream this, the default interpretation might be that this bad thing's gonna happen, so you have to preempt that by reframing it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you don't do that, the bad interpretation
Yeah,
will come to pass.
Agreed. I think that the Amoraim and the editor had no doubt that dreams came from the outside. They didn't suggest that there's something about you that produced your own dreams. And I think that they also believed that coming as they did from the outside, they foreshadowed what might happen to you. And what I find so fascinating about this is that it says, notwithstanding that they're external, and notwithstanding that they're really telling you something about the future, if you latch on to the right verse, you can pick among two possible futures and go for the better one. And that I find just sort of an amazing.
It's radical.
Very radical.
Yeah, it's radical in a world where you don't believe there's anything internally about dreams.
Yeah.
It's all external, it's all foreshadowing, and yet the potential ambiguity in the interpretation lets you do something with it.
But just to be clear, I guess I feel like it's not really so much like choosing out of two things and saying, I could go this way or this way. It feels more to me like putting a finger on the scale, because you are dreaming a thing, and the thing is one of these things. I mean, it doesn't say, did you think something in the middle of the night? Have a good thought, and then just leave it all open, and now we're gonna have peace with our neighbors, and yay. It's more saying, these are symbols that are going to present themselves to you, and they have their own meanings. And within that construct,
Not that,
you can lean. It
weren't-
doesn't really feel to me like you
they
can.
weren't just symbols, they were messages.
Yes, okay, messages, but yes, messages in the form of understood symbols. Yeah.
I like the imagery of the weight on the scale, right? Which is like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, neither do they. That's the prophecy piece. Like, we're getting a taste of it. We're not getting the whole picture here, and we might nudge the universe in a particular direction. I want to challenge to say that I don't think it's an either or here. I don't think that we have to read it that these things are external or versus internal. I think we can hold both, which is to say that the rabbis are not generally interested in original intent, if I may use a buzzword in our universe here. This is ours, right? Like, we're studying it, it's manifest for us. And so I want to invite, and then we'll read the last paragraph just so that we've sort of captured the whole image here, that I believe in my own lived experience that sometimes dreams are both internal and external. Where I'll dream a thing and then it happens. Or I dream a thing and then it was about what happened yesterday. Or I'm anxious about something I experienced in a dream, but then I experienced something later. It's like, oh, that's what this was all about. Whatever, right? And then the thing I said earlier is like, oh, maybe I'll make a choice next time I have this recurring dream. I actually don't think we have to choose that it's one or the other. I think we could easily read, like as you have, Dan. It's like, this is all internal. God is not even mentioned here once, right? At least in our text here. And I think, Michael, like as you said, we could read this as like, we know that they're seeing it as prophecy and external. It's downstairs. It's all right. So you're looking for the event downstairs.
No,
No.
it's
Oh.
upstairs.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, then I'm glad you're here.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Mike, come sit. Mike, you can sit. I can
The
sit.
chairs are in there, Mike.
We're almost
They're
done.
We're
behind
almost
the-
done. Have a seat. It's fine.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Glad you're here.
chairs Are on the rightmost cabinet.
We were dreaming about you. Okay, let's read this last one here. One who sees a dog in a dream should rise early and recite, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog wet his tongue. Before a different verse with a negative connotation can precede it into becoming reality. Yea, the dogs are greedy. One who sees a lion in a dream should rise early and recite, the lion is roared, who will not fear? The Lord God has spoken, who can but prophesy? And before a different verse with a negative connotation can precede it with becoming a reality, a lion has gone up from his thicket, a destroyer of nations has set out, gone forth from this his place, referring us, I believe, to God. Please.
I'm just reading this on a much more
Yeah.
simplistic level of like, it's kind of like look on the bright, sunny side of
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
kind of thing, really,
Yeah.
like
Well,
choose,
Monty Python whistling.
choose, exactly, like
Yeah.
choose the, choose the benevolent way, choose the optimistic way, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Go for it, Dan.
In some ways, this fits to like the modern neuroscience view of dreams, which is a big factor is memory consolidation. So the idea, there's a lot of evidence that what dreams do is it's sort of
Right, yeah.
you're going through what happened in your day, and it's consolidating your memory and helping you remember things. So if you take that interpretation, this is actually saying, and when you wake up, the first thing you're thinking, you're consolidating that memory in a certain perspective. So it's
Which here it's presented as binary, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be.
yeah. So it's like I was thinking about this in my dreams. Let me sort of, as I'm consciously reflecting on what I just dreamt about, let me try and connect that and remember this in a positive way.
Yeah.
But it seems that what is binary is you either believe that dreams are prophecy or you don't. Especially back in the day. And here they're saying they're not. in the end, you have, back to Michael's word, you have some agency. We can argue about how much, but if you believe all of this, then it seems to me you can't believe the dreams of prophecy.
But there's elsewhere, of course, like the Joseph story and like.
Well, right, exactly.
and
Like the
others
Torah
that
where
which-
it is.
The Torah, it is
Right.
prophecy.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of things. Some of them might be in contradiction to each other, right? One is, if you look through the references here, a lot of them, not all of them, are from prophets, right? The verses that they're choosing, mostly the negative ones, to be totally honest,
Right, yes,
right?
yes.
Right? Micah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Hosea, not so great, right? Not all of them, of course, right? There's definitely some good ones in there from prophets. That the cultural touchstone they're coming to is prophecy.
Right.
So for them, it might be that they actually can't divorce the things apart. That like, even the language we use to describe this is prophetic in nature.
Right.
So that's one layer of this. Another layer is that perhaps we have limited our way of thinking about prophecy, which is to say, in our cultural context, a prophecy is a thing that's destined to happen,
Right.
as opposed to a thing that probably will happen. Right? The whole story of Jonah, right, is he runs away from God. God tells him what to do, and then he's mad that God forgives them. The Gemara in another place explains why he's mad. The text doesn't really say. The Gemara explains in that case, he's mad because they made him a liar. He said, God's going to punish you, and then God didn't punish them, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't not prophecy before.
Right.
Human choice made the impact, changed what was going to happen, ostensibly, right? And so I would invite us to say that prophecy isn't a binary. I've dreamt it, therefore it's going to happen, or I've dreamt something and it's not going to happen, right? But that every choice we make ripples out into the universe to make other things happen, right? And that everything we do, including how I look at a thing, right? Every human encounter can be interpreted in more than one way, right? I could have especially if you get an email, it's like I can't read tone, I have no idea what the person's really thinking, right? So you can make a choice. Again, all the more so if we're reading prophecy, we don't know exactly what tone Jeremiah is doing. Maybe he was whispering, probably not, right? But I would think to say is that I don't think we have to make pardon the pun, because we're talking about choices, right? Which is like, I don't think we have to decide, is this or is this not prophecy? I think we can say, there is something here that's useful for us, spiritually useful, right? To say, I encounter something in a state of reality that I don't have control, right? Dreams are places where we don't have control. Unless you're really good at lucid dreaming, or there's those moments where you're in a dream and you're like, oh, this is a dream, I'm making a choice, and then it slips away from you again. But for the most part, it's a place where you don't have choice. And in our reality, in our consciousness, where we do have choice, how do we deal with those moments where I couldn't do anything about it? This happened to me. This dream is happening to me. That maybe I can interpret in a way that serves my neshama, my how I'm going to deal with the scenario. How I'm going to, it's that whole, I had a dream about a test, right? And I wasn't prepared, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm not in school anymore. So what is this really about? So, maybe symbols of schools are peace. Maybe we'll go with that, right? But I think that we don't have to hold one truth here. That if we want to say it's prophecy, it can be prophecy. If it's not prophecy, it's not prophecy. If it's about subconscious, it's about memory consolidation. It can be all of those things, right? And in the moment where it suits us best, we can choose. I don't feel like it has to be one. And I think here we have a lot of rabbinic voices. Rabbi Hanan, Rabbi Hanina, Rabbi Natan, Rava, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. They're not all agreeing with each other. We've got pieces of a puzzle here that perhaps serve us well in one moment or the next. Yeah, Dan.
I'm noticing something as I'm reading this now. So Rabbi Steinsaltz is obviously pulling in other sources, but he's the one talking about prophecy. The text is not talking about prophecy.
Yeah.
So every time the word prophecy is used, it's Rabbi Steinsaltz. So he's saying when
He's
you wake
coloring
up,
our interpretation.
yes. So he's saying when you wake up, think the good thing, not the text itself is when you wake up, think the good thing, not the bad thing. And he's saying because if you don't, the prophecy is going to be bad. But that's not the text.
Nice.
So he's injecting that in, and I'm sure it's probably not just him,
Right.
but it's
He's
not.
not just making it up, but
in
it's
some,
not
yeah.
there.
So in some ways, the Talmudic text is less about prophecy than this
Than
the
perhaps we've
interpretation
made
layered
it
on
up
top
to be.
on top of it.
I love that.
Right.
I want to add one more piece to this, and then we'll end, which is I want to bring us back to that ritual choice element of it. The Gemara does say yashkim, get up early. As a person who does not like to get up particularly, that's a place of struggle for me. I think there's something really powerful about the idea of like getting ahead of it, like making a choice. I'm gonna hit the ground running on this, right? I'm not just like sliding into a choice. I'm making a choice. I'm being active, not passive. I think when we talk about dreams, we are so passive, and here I think the Gemara is inviting us to like jump at the world in an active way, especially with all the things we don't understand, right? There's so much about the world we don't understand, right? We're only stuck between our own ears and nobody else's, right? What would it look like to jump ahead, to be more active in the way we deal with others, more charitable in the way we deal with others, right? Let's choose the positive interpretation versus the negative one, right? I think even if the rabbis are talking about dreams, we can understand that this is so much bigger than just dreams, right? It's about the way we approach the universe itself, the way we deal with the things that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to end us there. We're not meeting next week because it's Thanksgiving. I can't remember if there's a week in between, but the first week of December we'll meet back again, and we'll learn the next text. As I said last week, you are welcome to take your packets home, but I hope that you will bring them back. If you'd like to leave them with me, I'd be happy to have them. And the event downstairs, I believe, is still happening. So I think there's supposed to be drinks and food and other kinds of things.